where Michael Jackson had an absolute, total, and thorough inability to sleep.
I'm here to get justice for Michael Jackson.
Your Honor, I am an innocent man.
He was not an anesthesiologist. He was not board certified in cardiology. Conrad Murray was not board certified in any medical specialty. Michael Jackson's death was a homicide. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ortega, in regard to what we just observed, Earth Song on June 24th, so that was the last rehearsal meeting, the last time Michael was up on stage performing that night.
Yes.
Following that rehearsal performance of Earth Song that night, what happened, if you recall?
Michael stepped off the stage and joined me in the arena, and together we watched the next part of rehearsal together. Travis Payne stepped on stage for Michael, and we ran Heal the World so that Michael could look at the lighting elements, the scenic elements, the staging.
Okay. And you had referenced earlier a conversation with Michael about asking, are you happy, very happy, and talking about the tour. Where in time did that take place?
During the rehearsal of Heal the World, I was explaining, breaking it down for Michael as to how we were going to fully imagine it. And so he was looking at the stage, not only looking at the rehearsal that was in front of us, but imagining things that were still to come.
Okay.
And then that's when we had our conversation after the number.
Okay. And lastly, Mr. Ortega, in your conversations with Michael, did you and Michael discuss plans, professional plans, touring plans, beyond this tour that the two of you hope to engage in?
Yes.
Can you describe what you discussed as far as future plans, even beyond or as part of the This Is It tour?
Michael had hoped that after the London dates that he'd be able to take This Is It out into the world, perhaps even bringing it into the United States, and that after that he wanted to make movies.
Okay, and did you specifically discuss that with him?
Yes, I did.
And what movies did he want to make?
He invited me to join him as a co-director to full-length feature a film of Thriller, and also the Legs Diamond story, which was based on his Smooth Criminal short film.
And these discussions you had actually contemplated pursuing those endeavors following the tour?
We didn't get into the details that early, but it was just an invitation and a hope.
By both of you?
And a future. Yeah, surely.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Well, thank you. Cross-examination, please. Ms. Chernoff? Mr. Ortega, how are you today?
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
It's good seeing you again.
Thank you, sir.
I want to go straight to June 20th, the meeting at the house, at Michael Jackson's house. This was at the Carrollwood residence where he resided. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we have seen this email that was put up on the screen and you read for us, that email was sent prior, obviously, to the meeting being scheduled?
Yes.
Yes. Prior to sending the email to Randy Phillips, did you speak to him on the phone about what had happened on June 19th?
No.
So this was just an email that you sent cold, essentially. Just this is how I feel about certain things that are happening at this particular point in time with regard to the show.
Yes.
And you had said that the meeting that was scheduled at the Carrollwood residence you found out from your assistant. Did you happen to know whether or not it was Paul Gongaware who scheduled this meeting?
I thought it was, but I'm not certain, sir.
To your knowledge, was this meeting scheduled by Dr. Murray?
It could have been.
Could have been?
I wasn't told who the meeting was scheduled by. I was just invited to the meeting.
It could have been scheduled by Randy Phillips as
It
well.
could have been, yeah, right? Yes.
Would you agree that one of the conversations that you were going to have, one of the reasons for having this meeting was to discuss these missed rehearsals?
Pardon me?
One of the reasons that you were having this meeting, one of the reasons that you understood that you were having this meeting was to discuss Michael Jackson's missed rehearsals.
That wasn't brought up to me.
Well, your email talks about playing tough love, right? Pulling the plug. Was it your understanding that what you're referring to was perhaps some resolution to the problem of Michael Jackson's missed rehearsals?
Yeah, my comments were based on meetings that probably occurred before this night where Michael was informed that we had to get serious about coming to rehearsals.
You said that the meeting on the 20th was designed specifically, or resulted. Let me change that. The June 20th meeting was not the only meeting that was held at Michael Jackson's house regarding missed rehearsals, correct?
Probably not.
Probably not. Are you guessing? Or
Well, I wasn't at another one.
Right. Are you aware of another meeting that was held at Michael Jackson's house?
Not aware of it, but again, most likely there was one, because I know that Dr. Murray was creating a schedule now for Michael to try to help resolve the problem of Michael missing rehearsals.
Well, you had testified that the schedule that Dr. Murray was creating was as a result of the week before his death. Are you saying that the schedule he was creating was as a result of a meeting before that, before the 20th?
The result of the schedule was to try to help us.
Well, I understand that. Let me ask you this. Who asked Dr. Murray to prepare a schedule for Michael Jackson?
I have no idea.
The objection sustained.
You,
partial answers to
is it
So that's not an evidence.
Gotcha, James. Thank you. Is it possible that this schedule that was created by Dr. Murray was created weeks prior?
Sustained.
Do you know when Dr. Murray was asked to create this schedule?
I don't know if he was asked or if he offered. I just know that it was truly an attempt to try to help arrive us at a schedule that would work for Michael.
Prior to this June 20th email that was sent to Randy Phillips, had you expressed concern about Michael Jackson's missed rehearsals?
Yes.
And would it be fair that you expressed your concerns earlier than the last week before his death?
Yes.
And these missed rehearsals, these were at the Staples Center and also at the Forum?
I don't believe we started the Staples Center yet, sir. I believe they were from the Forum.
What was your impression, Mr. Ortega, of why Michael Jackson was missing these rehearsals? Well, you have already testified to Michael Jackson's state of mind. Do you think that he was missing these rehearsals just because he was tired or lazy? Did you ever have a conversation with anybody about why he was missing these rehearsals?
Yes.
Who did you have that conversation
I had
with?
conversations with a few people about, trying to find out why he wasn't showing up to rehearsals.
One of those people was Randy Phillips?
Yes.
Paul Gongaware?
Yes.
Frank DeLeo?
Probably not Frank.
Mr. Ortega, in your email, when you talk about it would break his heart if we pulled the plug, is this a conversation that you had with Randy Phillips, or that Randy Phillips had with you about pulling the plug?
No, it was based on me as the director of the production, sir, having real concerns that, real questions as to whether or not we were going to be able to make the goals without Michael.
If the plug had been pulled on Michael Jackson, what impact would it have on him personally?
Well, I think creatively he would have been devastated, I think, if he really wanted to do this tour.
What about professionally?
Professionally, I'm sure it would have not been a good thing.
Michael Jackson, you said you worked on the Dangerous tour with Michael
Yes.
Jackson. And what year was that?
1991,
And you also worked on the History tour.
yes.
And what year was that?
96 approximately.
To your knowledge, did Michael Jackson have any tours after the History tour?
I know he did perform on in a New York engagement. I don't think he had any tours, but I believe that he performed on an occasion, once or twice.
So the last time that Michael Jackson had a series of shows, a tour, so to speak, was in 1996?
Was the History tour.
The meeting that you had on June 20th at Michael Jackson's house, you described the conversation that you had with Dr. Murray. Would you consider it adversarial? The conversation with Dr. Murray?
Can you rephrase that, sir?
Were you fighting? Was it adversarial?
No.
Were you?
No.
You mentioned 2 or 3 statements that Dr. Murray said to you, and you said to Dr. Murray. Was there anything else that was said besides those statements you've already testified to?
There could have been.
Or could have been. Do you remember any of those statements?
Well, I just remember that Dr. Murray was saying one thing to me, and what Dr. Murray was saying to me was not exactly what had occurred. And at one point, Dr. Murray looked to Michael, because I think Michael was his source of information, and he was looking to Michael like Michael had said one thing, but in fact I was saying another. And so there was a moment of clarity, which was based around his assumption that I had taken Michael off, not allowed Michael to rehearse, and sent him home, and which I, clarified earlier wasn't the case.
And you were not privy to the conversations that Dr. Murray and Michael Jackson had prior to your arrival?
No.
You do not know what Michael Jackson might have told Dr. Murray about the encounter the night before?
No.
How long was this meeting, Mr. Ortega?
Not long.
Could you estimate for us?
Pardon me?
Would you estimate for us how long?
I would guess that I was in the room for about 10 minutes.
Is it your testimony today that the entire meeting lasted 10 minutes?
The portion of the meeting that I was involved in, because I left before everybody else left, felt brief.
Why did you leave before everyone else?
Because that's all I was called for, was that conversation.
Do you recall talking to Karen Fay? First of all, you know who Karen Fay is, correct?
I do.
Who is Karen Fay?
Michael's hair and makeup artist.
And she was the hair and makeup artist on the This Is It rehearsal?
Yes.
Do you recall telling Karen Fay that you read Michael Jackson? Well, let me finish. You might remember it. That you read Michael Jackson, The Riot Act?
No.
Do you remember telling Karen Fay directing Karen Fay not to placate Michael Jackson?
I remember Karen Fay being there on the night of the 20th and being as concerned as I was and everyone else that was in that small circle. I remember seeing Karen Fay coming back on the Tuesday.
Non-responsive.
Sustain. The answer is straight. Disregard the answer. Refine the question, please.
Let me ask you again, Mr. Ortega.
Yeah.
Did you tell Karen Fay not to placate Michael Jackson?
I would never have used that word, sir.
Well, did you tell her not to placate Michael Jackson and used a different word?
I might have told Karen Fay that Michael told me he was taking the reins and that he could use our support.
So the answer is no, you didn't tell her that.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that your success was somewhat tied to Michael Jackson's success and This Is It?
Don't understand the question.
Well, if This Is It was a successful show, that would certainly reflect upon you as well as Michael
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
So when you talk about Michael Jackson having a desire to complete This Is It, to do This Is It, you also had that same desire.
Sure.
And would you agree with me that without Michael Jackson showing up to rehearsals, that would impact you personally as well as Michael Jackson individually?
It would impact everyone.
Including you.
It would make it impossible for me to do my job.
And that was important to you doing your job.
That's what I was there for.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
You talked about Michael Jackson being involved in the production of This Is It. Is that correct?
Yes.
He was not just involved, he was very involved in the production, correct?
Yes.
He wasn't just co-choreographer or co-director in name only. It wasn't an honorary title, right?
No.
He was intimately involved in the decision-making.
Yes.
In fact, you mentioned a particular, was it a 3D effect that he himself had come up with? Is that right? It was
Yes.
his idea.
I don't know if it was his idea, but it came to me from Michael.
But you had never even seen it used before in a stage show.
No.
That was his idea. Would it be fair to say that he was involved?
I don't know if that's a question or a comment.
Would it be fair to say that Michael Jackson was involved in all of the effects that were involved in the show?
Are you talking about 3D effects?
Did he have a hand in all of the effects,
Oh,
ideas?
Yes, absolutely.
Certainly the choreography,
Yes.
the song.
State of
Yes.
mind. I
He was
believe
the
they're trying
boss.
to say he was in the right state of mind.
Yes.
He made all the decisions.
It was his show.
Yes.
And he told you that this was his time. This was it for him. Is that right?
Yes.
And what you understood him to mean by that is he understood the historical significance of what he was about to do.
Yes.
Where is he going with this?
You had mentioned that at the conclusion of these shows, that Michael Jackson was planning movies.
Where is he
Is
going
that right?
with all this?
And at the conclusion of these shows, he was also, you had discussed with him, taking the show on the road, taking it on tour.
He had talked about it, yes.
That was something you had talked about.
He talked to me about it.
That was his plan.
Yes, it's hope.
Okay. On the June 19th rehearsal, would it be fair to say that Jackson's condition scared you?
Yes.
Had you ever seen him that way before?
No.
On any occasion during the rehearsals for This Is It, did it ever strike you that Michael Jackson might have been on drugs? Might have been drugged?
Yes.
Had you ever met or personally known a man by the name of Dr. Arnold Klein?
No. Didn't know him, knew who he was, but didn't know him.
How did you know who he was?
Just knew him as a doctor.
You had been introduced to him?
No.
You had heard about him?
Yes.
Can you tell us where you had heard about him?
350, 352.
When you first met Dr. Murray, you said that it was at Michael Jackson's residence. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you said that you had seen him at a rehearsal. At the Forum
Dr.
Center.
Murray at a rehearsal?
Yes.
I believe, yes, once.
Once. You did not. You testified you did not believe you saw him at the Staples Center at all,
I don't recall.
but you do remember once at the Forum.
Yes.
Did you have any conversation with Dr. Murray?
Yes, I did.
All right. And did you initiate that conversation?
I was invited to call on Dr. Murray if I ever needed any assistance, if there was any ever problems with the schedule.
And he seemed concerned about Michael Jackson?
Yes.
Did you take him up on that invitation?
Yes.
Did you take his phone number?
Yes.
Dr. Murray at some point made suggestions. Were you part of the meeting where Dr. Murray made suggestions about Michael Jackson's schedule?
He brought those suggestions to me.
And you recall that one of the suggestions that he made is that Michael Jackson should be permitted to have lunch with his children. He should be able to stay home for lunch. And
Yes.
the rehearsals then, at that time, were much earlier than they ultimately wound up being.
No.
Do you recall any conversation with Dr. Murray about the diet that Michael Jackson was on, the foods that he was eating, his particular...
I don't recall a conversation about that, sir.
Tell us, you had said that the rehearsals went from Burbank, Center Stage, to the Forum. And I don't think I heard exactly when you said that move happened. Tell us when exactly it went to the Forum.
At the beginning of June,
Beginning of June. In May, the rehearsals were still at Center Stages
Yes.
in Burbank. And you told us that at Center Stage, you and Michael Jackson had creative meetings, and I guess you talked about what you were going to have in the show and things of that nature.
oh yes.
Was that through May and through April?
Yes, beginning in April and through May.
And as you moved to the Forum, then would it be fair to say that the rehearsals became a little more active? There was rehearsals on stage
Yes.
with Michael Jackson and the
More
gang?
people were incorporated into the body of rehearsals at that time.
And when you moved to the Staples Center, even more things were incorporated into the show, like effects, magic acts, things of that.
Yes.
I want to bring your attention to the week prior to Michael Jackson's death, and I'm going to tell you that Monday on that week was June 15th. Now, is that how you remember it? No.
I don't remember that Monday was June 15th. But
Okay. That week of June 14th, June 15th, 2009, the rehearsals were scheduled at the Staples Center. Is that correct?
we weren't. I don't believe we're at the Staples Center yet, sir. We were at the Forum.
Still.
Yes.
Well, June 15th through June 19th would be Monday through Friday. When did you move to the Staples Center?
I think we moved to the Staples Center like the Tuesday or the Monday or over that weekend.
So,
I'm guessing that because we were going to be at the Staples Center just for 2 weeks, and we were at the Forum for a longer period of time.
well, the following Tuesday would be the 23rd or 22nd of June.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that the week that Michael Jackson died is the first week that you moved to the Staples Center?
I think so.
So you had exactly 2 rehearsals at the Staples Center?
At the Staples Center, that's what I'm guessing, sir. I don't have a calendar in front of me, and I don't recall exactly, but I think it was a short period of time that we were at the Staples Center.
All right. Now, there was during these rehearsals, and we've seen this video, these rehearsals were actually videotaped, were recorded. Is that right?
These rehearsals were videotaped, yes.
And so were the rehearsals from June 15th through June 19th.
If Michael was there, we were recording per his request. If Michael wasn't there, we didn't necessarily have a video camera running.
Well, is your testimony today that if Michael was not there, you simply did not record?
I didn't have any reason to. Michael recorded rehearsals for his own benefit. No one photographed or recorded rehearsals until we had our actual cameras that were going to be used for the IMAG screens, which came late at the Forum or early at the Staples Center. So there were no other people recording other than when Michael requested recording.
Mr. Ortega, after the death of Michael Jackson, you were hired to help edit videotape for the movie This Is It.
Yes.
You were hired by Sony Pictures.
Yes.
And you sat in a room at Sony Pictures for 2 months
Yes.
editing this videotape.
Yeah, we had video footage that was taken interviews of the band and the dancers and the singers that was going to be used for a later behind the scenes of a filming of This Is It in London at some point. So there was that, yes, sir.
And this videotape that you edited, that you reviewed, had date stamps on them. They were labeled by the date.
Yes. I'm not quite sure what you're getting
Well,
at.
I'm going to sustain the objection. The partial answer, strict disregard.
Well, here's what I'm getting at. You reviewed all the rehearsals. You spent 2 months reviewing all the rehearsals. But you don't remember where the rehearsals were had the week before his death?
I believe, as I mentioned to you already, that we were at the Forum until the end of the month and then moved for a week into the Staples.
On June 19th, there is videotape that exists, is there not, of Michael Jackson sitting on a chair with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders? Have you seen that videotape?
I haven't.
You are aware that on June 18th, the day before Michael Jackson did not show up. On June 18th, Michael Jackson missed his rehearsal. He didn't show up. Is that right?
It's most likely, yeah.
Why is it most likely?
Well, he was missing for a period of about a week. So I'm not exactly sure what day or what date, but he was missing for a period of about a week in that area, sir.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
May I have just a second, Judge?
May I, please?
Okay, prosecuting attorney is pretty much examining Kenny Ortega, a cross-examination, and he's taking a few minutes to get some other ideas, I believe, to ask questions. Did you see that? Dr. Murray tapped his other attorney, and then they both looked at each other with each other's eyes and bounced each other, nodded the okayance or disagreements or something. But it wasn't a good look amongst each other.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ortega.
That's all I said. Thank you, sir.
Redirect examination, Mr. Walden.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Will Mr. Ortega step down subject to recall, Mr. Walden?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Ortega, I want to thank you for your testimony. Please do not discuss your testimony, the facts of the case as you know them, with any other witness until we finish the trial. You may step down and leave. However, you are to remain on call, which means you're subject to recall until the end of the case. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You can take a couple
Okay,
of
that was the
Thank you.
ending of the first witness
Yes, thank you.
of the Michael Jackson, Dr. Murray's trial.
Conducting direct? Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
apologize, Your Honor. I believe that Mr. Gongaware was right outside the courtroom when I called him. May I step outside and see if there's a problem?
Waiting on Mr. Gongaware.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated. Please state your name for the record. Spell your first and last names.
Paul Gongaware, Paulgongaware.
Mr. Gongaware, good afternoon, sir. Let me provide you with some instructions which I give to every witness. First of all, please sit back and relax. Although you may want to just pull up your chair just a little bit closer. Please speak loudly, although you don't have to speak right into the microphone. Please avoid the dreaded which can be really confusing. So answer yes or no. And also, many of us in our daily lives are used to interrupting each other after we're asked a question or part of it. It's important that you wait until you hear an entire question before you start to respond, and that way we won't have to interrupt. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Director, Ms. Brazil.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon,
Paul
Mr. Gongaware.
Gongaware, CEO
Sir, what do
of
you do?
AEG.
I'm the
Second.
co-CEO of AEG Live Concerts West.
What type of company is AEG Live Concerts West? What business are they engaged in?
Global touring of artists.
And what are your duties, or what is your role as the co-CEO of that concert promotion company?
I produce and promote concert tours.
And how long have you been doing that?
In my career, probably 35 years.
Mr. Gongaware, in your career as a concert promoter, did you work with Michael Jackson?
Yes.
What was the first tour or promotion that you were involved with Mr. Jackson?
Dangerous Tour in 92, 93, I think.
Were you involved in any other tours with Mr. Jackson?
Yes, the History Tour, 96, 97.
Moving forward to 2009, were you set to be involved, or were you involved in Mr. Jackson's last tour, This Is It?
Yes.
And what role were you participating in the tour, This Is It?
Worked as the producer and the promoter.
And as the producer and the promoter, would you describe what your duties would be relative to This Is It?
As a producer, the creative energy was coming from Kenny Ortega, the director, and Michael Jackson. And they would come up with these ideas, and it was my job to, once they figured out, it's really a process of building the tour and putting it together. And they would come up with an idea that seemed brilliant at night, and it would be shot down in the cold light of morning. But as these ideas formed, I had to take the idea and figure out, how are we going to do this, and how is it going to work, and how can we make it so it's bulletproof, and how can we, what's it going to cost to do this stuff? And that was sort of my side of it. And then I would take that information back to them, and they would incorporate that into the process and just move the process along.
So you made their creative visions reality in terms of the project, correct?
Yes, I was like an interface between art and commerce.
And as your interfacing occurred between art and commerce, you described Mr. Jackson and Kenny Ortega as being the artistic forces, correct?
Yes.
Would you describe Mr. Jackson's involvement in this creative process as you were planning and producing the This Is It tour?
He was totally engaged. Brilliant guy.
Did he seem to be excited to you about the prospect of participating in and creating the This Is It tour?
Yes.
Were you responsible for planning the rehearsal schedule?
No.
Were you involved in the calendaring and planning of the tour dates themselves?
Yes, that's really the other side of it. That's the promoter side.
I see. Mr. Gongaware, when the initial talks began for the London tour, This Is It, how many shows were contemplated?
We contracted 31.
And when you say we, who are you referring to?
AEG Live.
And who else? Mr. Jackson?
Oh, yeah. Mr. Jackson, yes.
So the tour dates initially planned included 31 concert events at the O2 Arena. Is that correct?
Yes.
Why was the number set at 31? Do you know?
Yes.
Will you tell me?
Prince had done 21 shows at the O2, and Michael wanted to do 10 more.
And when you say Prince, do you describe for me specifically who you're referring to?
The artist, Prince.
So the number 31 was something that Michael was closely involved with, and in fact called that number, correct?
Yes.
Were you involved, Mr. Gongaware, in the ticketing and the pre-sale for the tour dates?
Yes.
Would you describe for me, please, how that process took place? And what I'm referring to is if you describe the process of the pre-sale and the ticketing, how that worked.
Yes, we had people register on michaeljacksonlive.com, people who wanted to buy tickets, and we took 10 shows at first and set those up and put those on sale, just to gauge how strong the show was going to be.
And what was the response when you announced or put those 10 shows on to determine how strong the response would be? What was the answer?
Blew out.
Blew out. What do you mean by that?
Sold out instantly.
And what did you do next?
Well, I think we actually added some more shows in that particular cycle.
So you knew from the time that you began the pre-sale ticketing that you were going to contract, or you had contracted for 31 shows, correct?
That's right.
Would it be accurate to characterize the 10-show announcement as a promotional tool?
Yes.
After the 10 shows sold out instantly, how rapidly did the 31 shows sell out?
I don't remember exactly how the progression was of shows, but as we put shows up, they sold out instantly.
Did those 31 shows sell out in the pre-sale status?
I don't remember exactly.
Describe for me what it means to have people in the queue with regard to the ticket selling process.
Well, the queue is just like the lineup of people waiting to get in to buy their tickets. It's just how many people were actually there waiting.
At the time that the 31 shows sold out, were there still people waiting to purchase tickets?
Yes.
How many?
At the 31, I'm not sure. I did check at the 50 shows.
And what was that number?
There were about 250,000 people still in the queue, which would have been enough to sell out another 50 shows.
Mr. Gongaware, in the planning of the concert dates, was there an intention by the parties to the contract that there would be more than 50 shows? In other words, was this going to be a multi-city tour? tour.
Yes.
Now, I have an 11-page document. I'd ask that it be marked People's Number 3, please.
It is?
I'm showing it to the council. It's an 11-page document that has the months May 2009 through March 2010. I'm showing it to Mr. Chernoff.
Yes, I assume council had seen it.
If I had, I don't recall.
All right, take the moment, please. Thank you.
May I approach?
You may, Ms. Brizzo.
Mr. Gongaware, please take a look at the exhibit that's been marked as People's Number 3. It consists of 11 pages. If you'll take a moment and familiarize yourself with it, I'd like to ask you some questions once you get through it. Mr. Gongaware, do you recognize the exhibit that's been marked as People's Number 3?
Yes.
Describe what it is, please.
It's the...
Each document that contains the month of May 2009, correct?
Yes.
And the rehearsals that were scheduled to take place and did take place in May of 2009, that document indicates the date and the location of the particular rehearsal for that date in May, correct?
Yes.
Where were where were the rehearsals held in the month of May 2009?
We were at the center staging in Burbank.
And turning to the next page, does that reflect June 2009?
Yes.
Does that calendar date also reflect the dates and locations of the rehearsals in June?
Yes.
And where were the rehearsals by date located in the month of June?
The first 3 weeks were in the Forum, and then we moved into Staples Center.
So May and June in People's Number 3 contains your rehearsal schedule, correct?
Yes.
Turning now to July 2009. Your Honor. May the record reflect, I am, with the assistance of Mr. Walgren, placing a page of People's Number 3 on the overhead projector so the jurors can see it at the same time. Mr. Gongaware, are you able to see that up there?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes? So June conducted at Staples Center, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Gongaware, I'd like to turn now to July 2009. Does July 2009 accurately reflect the scheduled rehearsals as well as show dates as well as days off?
Yes.
And that would be for the performances and rehearsals at the O2 Arena located in London. solved, correct?
That's correct.
Who attended that meeting?
Michael was there, Kenny,
Mr. Ortega?
yes, Randy Phillips, our CEO, Frank DeLeo, who was acting as Michael's manager then, and Dr. Murray.
And how would you describe the tone of that meeting, the purpose and the tone?
I thought the tone was great. Michael was not at all defensive. He was engaged. He understood that what we wanted for him was just, what he needed to do and what was best for him.
Did you all have a discussion amongst those of you who you described were there, Randy Phillips, Kenny Ortega, Michael, Dr. Murray, Frank DeLeo, and yourself? What was the conversation about?
It was about what can we do to help Michael to give him everything he needs so he can get to where he has to be.
What were you referring to when you say everything he needs to get to where he needs to be?
Well, there's certainly health and his health, his eating habits, just his rehearsal habits, his engagement with the whole process.
And you described for us that Michael was not at all defensive or upset. He was receptive to the concerns that were expressed by you all who were there.
Yes.
Describe for me Dr. Murray's tone and his attitude towards the meeting, please.
Dr. Murray was very engaged. He listened a lot. He really tried to understand the situation. And I think he did. He expressed to us that he did. He understood what needed to be done, and he knew what he had to do as his part of this.
Dr. Murray indicated to you all that he would take care of the situation?
But yes, he knew what he had to do.
At a convenient point, Mr. Zerger, let us know for purposes of the adjournment. Thank you.
Now would be a good time, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to take the evening adjournment, which means the evening recess, but the law requires that at the end of every court day, I deliver to you the following admonition, so please be patient with me and bear this in mind. Do not discuss this case or any of the parties or individuals mentioned it with anyone during the course of the trial. Don't form or express any opinions about the case until it is submitted finally to you. Don't visit any scene or location that may have been referenced or mentioned or involved in the case. Don't perform any experiments or conduct on your own or through another person any independent research or investigation on any topics, subjects, or persons mentioned or involved in the case. Do not come into contact with any television or radio programs, newspaper or magazine articles, books, or the Internet regarding any of these topics or subjects. Do not access on your own or through another person any Internet websites, including but not limited to any search engine sites such as Google, Ask, or Bing, or social networking sites, including but not limited to MySpace or Facebook, regarding any topics or subjects mentioned or involved in the case. Nor should you text or tweet or respond or read any texts or tweets regarding any of those topics. In and around the building, feel free to speak to other members of the jury, of course, regarding matters entirely unrelated to the trial. If you have to bring something to the attention of the court, please bring it to the attention of the court staff. Have no contact or communication whatsoever with the defendant, the attorneys, the witnesses, or the spectators. Each of you has that list of admonitions. Do you acknowledge and agree to comply with all of them, ladies and gentlemen? All indicate in the affirmative. All right, thank you. If you could just go into the jury room, we'll make arrangements to transport you. Have a good evening. We're going to be in recess till tomorrow morning at 8:45 a.m. You know where to find us. We know where to find you. Good evening.
Okay, we just wrapped it up. Until tomorrow, 8:45 a.m. will be trial day 2. We will be seeing what's going on tomorrow at 8:45, about 9 o'clock a.m. That will be September the 28th, and we'll be going into the second day of our trial. This is Angelique. Also, follow me over at MJ Trial 50 at Twitter. And if you also want to follow on Facebook, you can follow on Facebook by Princess Angelique. Thank you very much for joining us today, and you have a wonderful day.